I am proud to be with you to reflect, to remember those we've lost, to rededicate ourselves to the fight against discrimination, but also to ending HIV in a generation here in Greater Manchester as we gather on this World AIDS Day 2017. The theme of this year's World AIDS Day is hope. And in the times that we're living through, sometimes it's hard to have hope. Hard when we have the so-called leader of the free world promoting hate and division from his office. And yet, let's think back to how far we've come so that we do have that real feeling of hope as we gather here this evening in this city, a city that's always been a beacon of equality and diversity to the rest of the world. Think about how far we've come in the last 30 years, not just in terms of the support and the treatment that's now available, the medical advances that we've made and we just heard about, but also in the way that attitudes have changed. You know, Manchester did step forward in those very early days in the mid-1980s to provide support to people who at the time were being shunned by society. Manchester was there for them, with them, and that's why we are so proud of this city. The AIDS line, set up with the support of Manchester City Council, helped give that hope to people when perhaps there was none. And we've built that over the years to a point where today things are completely transformed. And I would want to pay tribute to the organisations working in our sexual health partnership in the city, BHA, the George House Trust, the LGBT Foundation, who day in, day out are supporting people and building their sense of hope. But we do need to go further, and we do need to tackle the stigma that Gillian just spoke so powerfully about. I was working for Chris Smith just over 15 years ago when Chris became the most prominent person in British public life to say that he was HIV positive, and I can remember vividly the shock that was felt at that time. But actually, if you look back, by stepping forward, Chris helped to tackle that stigma and help give confidence to people coming after him that it was possible to say that and to show that life goes on as it did before. And that's why I would say to everybody that we need to take inspiration from those examples and to support those who speak out, who are open in saying that they are HIV positive, so that we can tackle the stigma that is still there, and by doing that help ensure that there is earlier diagnosis, because that, as we know, is so crucial in terms of how we can then support people. So that should be something that we need to do as we look to the future. You know, this evening we do remember those who we have lost along the way. I think it is so fitting this evening that we're here later on to rededicate the restored beacon of hope. That couldn't be more fitting in terms of the theme of this year's World AIDS Day. But I just want to finish by saying, you know, as your mayor, as mayor of Greater Manchester, as somebody who has responsibility for the National Health Service here in Greater Manchester, and of course the other public services, that I will be side by side with you in the ongoing fight that we have to ensure that we tackle the stigma that I just spoke about, that we do improve the way the services are there to support people, and together let's make this commitment this evening that together from here we will work to end HIV in Greater Manchester within a generation. It is now within our reach, and if we all pull together and if we set that as our ambition, I have no doubt, given how far we've come in the last 30 years, that we can go even further in the next 30. Thank you very much indeed for being here this evening, and thank you so much for letting me be part of this gathering, this vigil this evening. Thank you.
quick thanks to Andy Burnham for those words. Thank you very much. I was diagnosed with HIV 2 weeks after my 17th birthday, and I remember getting the bus home and making a decision. And at that time, I remember going back to my family home and deciding that I could turn right and go into the kitchen and tell my family, or go left and go up to my bedroom and live in fear. And I'm sad to say that I lived in fear for too many years. I'm now 31, that's 14 years ago, and I'm glad to say that I found the courage to tell my family 2 months ago, and I'm glad to say that they're here tonight as well. I told my family, I wanted to tell them for years, and I couldn't find the words. They would always stick in my throat every time. So I wrote a letter. I actually wrote 4 letters, one to each of my brothers and my sister and their partners, and to my mum and dad. And I posted those letters to them because I couldn't get the words out. And I've written a little poem about finding hope in darkness. Hope is a big red postbox standing proud in the early evening sun, an iron strong-willed addition to the street, to our cities, to our lives. And hope is 4 little letters folded inside 4 little envelopes. And there he stands, 4 letters in hand, before the red postbox that brings him hope. After 14 years of living in fear, 1 drop, and it's finally done. 4 letters to try and explain why shame led to sadness, led to silence, led to hopelessness. But you see, hope is all around us. You only have to look in every nook and corner of our lives. It waits diligently, patiently, optimistic with the prospect that we will encounter it when we least expect it. Hope is another red blood test to prove the previous one wrong. The wait for it seems longer than an eternity, but maybe, just maybe, he hopes. And hope is the little red mug full of steaming hot tea when the news is not as expected and he's left wanting to flee those horrifying words. That little room, this horrifying life. But hope is also a red t-shirt emblazoned with G, H and T, a friendly face, a warm embrace, a realisation, it's not just me. And now hope is 4 new little letters, P, R, E and P, as we see a radical new approach has begun to slow the encroachment of this global epidemic. New infections on the decline gives a sublime and renewed sense of hope. And hope is a little red ribbon we place diligently over our hearts to remind us of our small part in a globalised tragedy, a ribbon that stretches out across continents, across borders, across difference, towards hope. And hope is a beacon that shines in the darkest night, a life-giving tree planted in 1993 that steps through youth, maturity and senescence to a plinth where we stop, remember, sing, dream, laugh, cry, breathe, sigh, reflect. But most importantly, we inject this monument with a renewed sense of hope on this day of its rededication. So hope, it's just 4 little letters, H, O, P and E. No big deal. Just 4 little letters, each one sealed tight with the regret and remorse of 14 years of silence. Yet, a moment more still, he lingers, the paper squeezed tightly between his fingers before dropping 4 little letters to sister, brother, father, mother, to say, hope is a big red postbox. Thank you. So now has come the time, if you haven't already, to light your candles. And we are going to process around the village. Now, I've been given strict instruction that you are to wait until the people on the stage have exited the stage and moved over to the exit just on your left. And then once we're at the exit there, the marshals will take us out of the park. Do please follow the instruction of the marshals. They are there for our safety to make sure that we get round safely. And when we come back, we'll be holding a minute's silence to remember those who we've lost to HIV.